The enormous, dazzling forms of the extraterrestrial ships unexpectedly arrived, throwing shadows across the biggest cities on Earth. Their angular shapes, which seemed to defy human engineering, gave them an intimidating, yet inspiring appearance. Came to conquer, not to bargain or investigate. Their superior technology made Earth's defenses appear horrible. Aircraft were shot down in midair, missiles were precisely intercepted, and satellites were rendered ineffective. And the invaders didn't even bother to launch extensive assaults on military targets. Didn't need to. In an attempt to assistance was sufficient to destroy any resistance that Earth's governments might have once had. When their military prowess faltered under the weight of the invasion, anarchy broke out all over the world. In an attempt to escape the aliens, survivors fled into the countryside while towns were destroyed by fire or abandoned. Apparently, these invaders were more interested in enslaving people than in eradicating them. At least, not right away. Survivors are being forced by humanity into labor camps to harvest resources, probably for their own benefit. As the conquest went on, it became evident to everybody that the aliens viewed humanity as little more than bothersome pests that should be managed or eradicated whenever it is practical, amid the isolated wilderness of Siberia. Life persisted in the hard solitude of snow, apart from the mayhem engulfing the rest of the world, covered the endless woodlands, and the temperature dropped significantly below freezing. Only the sporadic howls of wolves or the crack of frozen trees could break the intense silence here. On the universe that appeared to have been unaffected by the alien invasion, where surviving had always required daily struggle with, or another man lived alone in the middle of this wilderness, without any alien overlords. Years of solitude and the harsh surroundings had hardened him. His cabin, which was tucked away amid the trees and built of substantial logs, was evidence of his inventiveness. He lacked electricity, a link to the outside world, and yearning for it. This man, whose name was only spoken among the select few, he hunted for his meals, employing nomadic Siberian hunters who occasionally passed through. Traps and a gun he kept in perfect condition. His existence was one of survival and discipline, very different from the world of cities and led governments that had fallen apart due to foreign domination. But he wasn't completely alone. A Siberian tiger's enormous paws made faint impressions behind them as it went silently over the snow. Bold black stripes and a startling orange and white combination appeared to fit in wonderfully with the wintry landscape. It was not your typical predator. Its eyes were sharp and perceptive, scanning the environment as it moved, its body coiled with a predator's grace. Even for its kind, the tiger was large and it carried itself quietly. With assurance that suggested years of meticulous training, the tiger was more than just a savage. It was a companion, and the man had discovered the tiger years prior, a defenseless cub stuck in a situation that was bound to him by something more profound than words. At the time, it had been weakly clinging to life in a poacher's trap. Despite all odds, the man had kept it warm in the raw Siberian and fed it leftover meat scraps to bring it back to health. As their relationship deepened over time, the tiger came to trust the guy, and the man learned to trust the tiger's strength and senses. Together, they created a partnership that was ideal for Deadpool. To him, the tiger was more than simply an animal. It served as a reminder of how to survive in this hostile and merciless environment. The man frequently observed the tiger as it moved through the forest, demonstrating his ability to persevere in the face of overwhelming odds. Admiring its silent strength and agility, they came to a mutual understanding, and a silent communication was created. Of years spent together, the tiger obeyed his orders not out of fear, but rather because it trusted him and was smart. Greater than any animal he had ever seen, and its devotion to him was unwavering. One chilly morning, when the guy and tiger encountered an alien scout ship while traversing the snow-covered woodland. It was probably a reconnaissance vessel, but the man squatting low found its presence in this isolated region of the planet worrisome. They watched the odd machine as it hovered a few feet above them, telling the tiger to remain hidden together. The man's jaw tightened as the Earth scanned the area in an unsettling blue glow. The invaders had already started to spread even here, in the most remote parts of the planet. The man's knowledge that the war was not yet ended was only strengthened by the encounter. He had managed to escape the mayhem of the invasion, preferring to concentrate on his own survival. But the scout ship's presence felt difficult these days. Aliens had undervalued humanity despite their advanced technology and haughtiness. They believed they could conquer the entire Earth without any resistance, treating people like insects that needed to be crushed. They were unaware that beneath the surface, humanity's greatest strength was not its army or its technology, but rather the man had spent years demonstrating flexibility, resiliency, and in certain situations, pure unpredictableness. Though he was unaware of it at the time of his training, he was getting ready for this moment by strengthening his relationship with God. Although the invaders may have believed they had taken over Earth, the tiger had been paving the way for this, had not taken into consideration the connection between man and beast, a relationship established as the scout ship vanished into the distance, the crucible of survival. The tiger's eyes met the man's as he stood there, and they briefly came to a wordless agreement. Together, they would demonstrate to the invaders that Earth was not theirs in order to evict the aliens from their hiding place. Was ruthless and deliberate, and they showed no desire to become part of humanity, or they were so advanced in their grasp of the cultures they were demolishing that they didn't. Hovering drones scanned every city for any indication of population growth, requiring a lot of work to manage. Resistance, those found to be breaking the restrictions, were immediately removed, and their weapons were not only infeasible. A person may be destroyed by a single beam that was both effective and terrifyingly accurate. Fear turned as their most potent weapon, spreading more quickly though. Due to the extensive disruption caused by their robots during the first several weeks of the invasion, many people left the cities, seeking safety in rural locations in a panic, but the aliens were ready for that. They set up checkpoints along all of the main escape routes, capturing people in a manner similar to setting up livestock camps. The surviving populace as forced labor camps rather than havens where people worked diligently. While being closely monitored by extraterrestrial supervisors, resources were taken away from resistance activities, started nearly immediately after the Earth was brutally efficiently put onto ships bound for unidentified destinations. Immediately, but the world's forces were ill-prepared and ill-organized. A few courageous groups, but the alien forces were too strong for their sophisticated weapons and communication systems, tried to retaliate by attacking remote areas and sabotaging supply lines using guerrilla tactics. Patrols, but each win was fleeting because each patrol was destroyed. The aliens struck back tenfold, wiping out entire villages thought to be home to rebels. Despite these glimmers of hope, many eventually gave up the battle because the price of disobedience was too great. Among the survivors, persistent rumors of a covert resistance force that existed deep within the wilderness, in contrast to the dispersed groups functioning outside. This resistance was allegedly more structured, tactical, and guided by a person who recognized the aliens' vulnerabilities. Few were fully aware of the specifics, but the stories provided. The resistance gave them something to cling to, a reason to think that humanity wasn't totally vanquished. Were people from a variety of backgrounds, including former soldiers, engineers, doctors, and explorers. They operated out of temporary bases that were always moving, even for individuals who had never engaged in combat in their life. Supplies were limited to evade notice, and each mission carried the risk of destruction. But they persisted because they thought that even a tiny amount of work may have an impact. For them, reclaiming their world was more important than simply surviving. The resistance was informed about the Siberian man and his tiger, through a variety of communications, initially disregarded the tales as inflated falsehoods. A guy with a tiger couldn't possibly lead a successful battle or even be a threat to the invaders, but according to additional reports appeared, detailing how alien patrols were destroyed in isolated areas without cause, and the resistance started to take. They were intrigued not only by the man's skill, but also by how unlikely it seemed that he would survive in such a... In order to find the individual and persuade him to support their cause, a small team was dispatched to an isolated area. Navigating hazardous terrain while enduring bitter cold and perhaps harmful creatures when they eventually located him, they were shocked by his appearance because he was not like any male they had ever met. Appeared to represent the wild itself. His sharp eyes and worn features revealed a life lived far from civilization, and the enormous tiger at his side served as a constant reminder of the wild world he lived in. The man's proposal was to just join the resistance and assist them in retaliating, but his response was straightforward and icy, dismissing their attempts as futile and highlighting the lack of organization and the desperation that pervaded their operations made him believe that the resistance was just a bunch of idealists. He clung to hopelessness and had no desire to support a cause that was losing ground, particularly when survival was at stake. Was still feasible, the resistance squad contended for individuals who chose not to engage in combat. In an attempt to evoke his feeling of duty, they discussed the lives that could be saved and the possibility of a time when humanity might flourish once more, but the man was unconvinced since he had witnessed too much. In his view, humanity had already lost the battle for a long time. The invasion wasn't the only thing that had broken them before the aliens arrived. It was the tiger silently observed their incapacity to cooperate in order to stand united when it counted most. As the talk progressed, its keen eyes watched every gesture and facial expression. The weight of the animal's presence was overwhelming to the team, as if it were evaluating their sincerity. Even if the man denied, they refused to give up because they believed he had the abilities and information that they did not possess. And more significantly, he had managed to survive where many others had perished. If anyone could turn the tide, it was him. The crew departed with sorrow, uncertain if their work had been in vain. Eventually, the guy and his tiger went back to their usual path through the wilderness. But the man couldn't ignore the urgency in their voices or the resolve that had propelled them. Something had changed. The man couldn't ignore the sense that his abilities were intended for heat. He considered the tiger's strength and tenacity to be something greater, survived in the face of overwhelming odds, just as he and they had confronted earlier. Perhaps it wasn't just about survival anymore, because they had overcome obstacles that would have broken most people. Maybe it was time to fight for the globe that had once been their home, not just for themselves. The connection between years ago, when the man had discovered the cub weak and barely breathing, he and the tiger had become welded in survival. He had been caught in a poacher's trap, and the sight had made him angry at the brutality, but also aware of the, against all reason, he decided to save the animal's will to live, using food scraps and water to nurse it back to health in the early days. It was brittle in those days, a ghost of the predator it would grow into. But even with each passing month, the tiger's eyes glowed with defiance. Stronger, and in contrast to domesticated animals, so did its tie with the man. Tiger's devotion was based on a partnership based on respect for one another, not fear or dependency. In exchange for food and safety, the tiger provided company in a world that had long been empty. It started to secretly observe his tactics and adjust to his moves while accompanying him on hunts. The two formed an unspoken understanding, and the tiger's gradual use of movements and looks to communicate became more than simply a friend. They were an extension of the man who lived in the Siberian wilderness as required. tenacity, and the tiger flourished in its hostile surroundings after learning to move. Its enormous paws could discreetly track prey across the snow, distributing its weight evenly to prevent sinking. Waiting for the ideal opportunity to arrive with almost supernatural patience, the man frequently learned from its moves together and marveled at its instincts. When the man lacked the tiger's natural strength, he compensated by forming a team that complemented each other's strengths. Where the tiger's primal savagery made up for its lack of the man's precision in strategy and instruments. The tiger developed into a powerful animal over time. Even for a Siberian tiger, its size was astounding. Its eyes possessed a keen intellect, and its muscles rippled beneath its thick fur. Frequently looking around with an almost human awareness, the guy started to realize how the tiger could, not only was he a predator, but he also anticipated dangers before responding to minute changes in the surroundings. Was a guardian always on patrol and prepared to protect its region from the bomb? Beyond just surviving together, the tiger appeared to comprehend the man's feelings in a way that transcended reason. When the man was upset, the tiger remained around, offering a quiet consolation. When he was resolved, the tiger matched his ferocity, eager to follow him wherever he went. This relationship wasn't suspect. It originated from years of shared adversity and was something that could be forced or trained. Trust the tiger wasn't merely an animal's willingness to survive in a world that had turned against them was reflected in it. The man's top concern when the aliens started their invasion was to protect the tiger because he was aware of the animal's outlush power, and each time they confronted him, he couldn't face the idea of losing it because of its size and strength. But as the months went by, it realized that the tiger could easily hold its own because it had previously encountered hunters and predators, and the amazing technology used by the aliens meant little to a creature that walked in silence. The hurricane's intensity and the wind, the tiger's instincts were more acute than any weapon, and with unwavering resolve, the guy started to recognize the tiger's potential as a weapon against the invaders. Its physical strength and intelligence made it a formidable force, and he began preparing it for war refinement, and since he knew that with the correct preparation, it could be a valuable weapon in the conflict. The tiger's already impressive abilities were able to identify alien machines. It practiced using its speed and agility to invade their weaponry while observing their motions and vulnerabilities. The man used discarded materials to create homemade armor for the tiger, which allowed him to outmaneuver even the most sophisticated drones. The tiger's training goes beyond physical conditioning to safeguard its critical areas without impairing its mobility. In order to communicate during combat, the guy trained it to react to certain signs using whistles and gestures. Because of its intellect, the tiger was able to quickly adapt and begin anticipating the man's commands before they were even been granted their partnership, which resulted in a smooth dance with every movement synchronized and accurate. They worked together to refine their abilities in the wilderness, using the hostile environment as training grounds. The tiger discovered how to take advantage of the environment by hiding in the snow and striking from an unexpected views. The tiger stood out not only for its size and power, but also because its flexibility. It could assess a situation and modify its strategy in real time, frequently surpassing the alien machinery had turned to face the man, who stared in wonder as the tiger's strong teeth crushed an alien drone. Surgical precision at the machine core meant that strategy, not simply pure force, was used. Having a deeper comprehension of its adversary than instinct, the man recognized that the tiger was more than just a weapon, a living example of humanity's tenacity and the fortitude that came from overcoming obstacles, conditions. The man started to view the tiger as a beacon of hope. As their training went on, represented all that the aliens had misjudged about Earth. Its capacity for tenacity, learning, and resistance. Despite all odds, the guy was aware that the tiger's mere existence would motivate others by demonstrating to them that the battle was not finished. It was about demonstrating that both nature and humanity could unite in the face of a shared foe. The tiger was more than just an ally. It was a partner in every meaning of the term. Its loyalty and man were the only things that could match its strength and intelligence. Black and White couldn't magically dispel their differences. They were equal in power and missions to defeat the tiger he saw as long as they stood together. The result of all his battles for adaptation, survival, and the unbreakable tie between man and beast. With a common goal and an unwavering resolve to recapture, they would confront whatever lay before together. Their Earth. The initial encounter with the aliens exposed their biggest vulnerability and overconfidence, which resulted from because of their technological dominance, they believed that animals on Earth were too unsophisticated to compete with their sophisticated systems. They were unprepared for an adversary who could combine human knowledge with the instinct and ferocity of a predator. Because of their conceit, man and his tiger unexpectedly attacked, taking advantage of the aliens' unfamiliarity with the wilderness. There was no time for counterattack because the onslaught was deadly and precise. In the harsh terrain and deep trees, alien patrols using drones and mechanical scouts found it difficult to see the terrain before them. Machines weren't made for the winding roads and deep snow of Siberia. They were made for cities and broad areas. The tiger became a scorpion into a phantom in the trees as he led the patrols into ambushes and laid traps using his knowledge of the terrain. They dismantled patrol by striking with deliberate precision and vanishing before the aliens could respond collectively. The invaders were frantically trying to adjust these victories once patrol left. Despite being modest in scope, the announcement of the enigmatic duo had a significant impact. Tales of a man and his tiger among the human communities that are still alive and in resistance? Eliminating alien patrols became a rallying cry for those who had all but given up on resistance, and a symbol of hope. Motivated by these stories, they changed their strategy and gave up trying to engage the aliens directly. Rather than implementing the guerrilla tactic which had been so successful, the wilderness became their ally, and they, reluctant to completely join, they used the lessons they had learned from the man's example to retaliate in their own ways. The opposition, when he could see how his actions were affecting the alien reaction, grew more hostile as they dispatched greater troops into the woods with the intention of destroying this unforeseen danger. The guy and his tiger adjusted and learned about the new strategies and technologies that identified vulnerabilities and take advantage of them. The tiger ambush was already an expert at stealth, and it started aiming for their sensors after learning how to evade the alien drone's detection. And vulnerabilities, turning off machines that were previously believed to be impregnable. The aliens are now aware of the man's presence, assumed that his triumphs were due to chance or rudimentary ingenuity, which further undervalued him. He believed that brute force would handle their issue, so they sent heavily armed soldiers to pursue him. These units were outfitted with greater difficulty, was presented by energy-based weaponry and strengthened armor, yet even the terrain was difficult, and they had to contend with the man's strategic thinking and the tiger's adaptability. As much as the man and his tiger snowstorms, the invader's adversary was unyielding. The cold conditions hindered their movements and interfered with their systems, providing the pair with a necessary advantage. The man started to notice trends in the strange tactics they employed, such as rigid formations and quote-unquote signs of deliberate thought, end quote. He took use of their weakness, predictable movements, to expose them to unorthodox strategies, which led to patrols into dead ends, forcing them to use their speed to separate the tiger. Despite their advances, the aliens were ill-prepared, and their power turned into the hammer that struck at their weakest places. As the opposition became more formidable, the guy found himself attracted to an adversary who coupled endurance with overpowering force. Despite his misgivings, he gave them advice and offered his understanding of the aliens' shortcomings. His method of wilderness survival was straightforward, pragmatic, and results-driven rather than ideological. The resistance rapidly learned to modify their techniques to match their mentor's accuracy and effectiveness, and they started to plan their assaults, targeting supply routes and alien bases with a degree of skill that attracted the Tiger's contribution to these operations was unmatched, taking the invaders by surprise. A live memory of Earth's defiance and how the aliens misjudged the resistance, amazed frequently characterizing it as more human than animal due to its commitment and intelligence. The Tiger's inclusion in their ranks raised spirits and gave them the fortitude to overcome insurmountable obstacles for many. Was evidence that humanity still had a chance to take back their planet from the extraterrestrial invaders. Disappointed with their failure to overcome opposition, they started implementing progressively more sophisticated technologies. They unveiled new drones with camouflage technologies and thermal sensors to combat the guerrilla tactics that had seemed to be so successful. These innovations created new difficulties that forced the Mammon, once more, his Tiger adapted by learning to conceal its heat signature in order to evade discovery, while the man created defenses against the cloak drones for every new task alone. The turning point occurred during an attack that fortified their resolve and drove them to outthink and innovate against their adversaries. On a significant alien outpost that is strategically and heavily fortified, for months it had been a pain in the Resistance's side. The man realized its importance and came up with He integrated the Resistance's expanding resources with his knowledge of the aliens' strategies to devise a plan to destroy it. The Tiger played a key role in developing a plan that depended on accuracy and synchronization, leading the charge and using its strength and speed to destroy important defenses. The combat was intense, and both sides suffered severe casualties. Knowing that victory could change the course of events, the Resistance battled with a desperation-driven determination. The man and his Tiger navigated the chaos of the war like a natural force, hitting with the transportation scheme, the outpost's defenses, while strong, were no match for the combination of accuracy that left the aliens reeling. When the dust settled, the outposts were in ruins, and the aliens were compelled to use human ingenuity and primordial fortitude. However, this victory signaled a major change in the war, with the aliens now completely understanding the danger. As the man and his Tigers started to reevaluate their strategy, they tightened their influence over the territories they dominated, retreating from less vital locations to concentrate their resources and critically consider their impact on governments. This concentrating on important targets while increasing the threat of aliens in some methods also made it possible for the Resistance to take advantage of the man in spite his initial hesitancy. He ended up at the forefront of the struggle to save humanity and rose to the position of leader not by decision, but out of necessity. The Tiger by his side served as a continual reminder of what they fought for, a society in which fortitude and tenacity might triumph over even the most formidable. Together, their difficulties had demonstrated that the aliens' biggest vulnerability wasn't their reliance on technology, but rather their FA's inability to recognize the strength of the connection between humans and nature, meant that the eventual conflict was more than just the humanity's last stand with the aliens, was the result of the Resistance's efforts. Disappointed with their failure to put an end to the rebellion, they concentrated their resources in one large operation to eradicate the escalating menace by using its most cutting-edge technologies and heavily deploying legions of drones. The sky were filled with armed men and massive mechanical war machines that were larger than anything humanity had ever seen, packed with their ships obstructing the sun in an attempt to demonstrate the bravery of the Resistance, had no idea how big the task was. They were outgunned and outnumbered. But they had spent months. The Tiger's presence and the man's tactics had formed the cornerstone of their preparation for this moment. Operations, battles, ambushes, and lessons learnt had all contributed to this encounter. Resistance had become more resolute and numerous, and their strategies had changed to take advantage of every alien troop's susceptibility. When they attempted to crush the Resistance's stronghold, he organized a counterattack that needed to be executed precisely. dividing the troops into tiny mobile units, each assigned a particular job. Some units focused on the alien supply routes are cutting off resources and reinforcements. The individual himself led the effort to cut off their communication networks, causing confusion and delays throughout their ranks. Together, the Core Strike Squad and the Tiger targeted the heart. In the extraterrestrial operation, the command center, the Tiger, dressed in its AS armor, flowed through the battlefield like a shadow. Its purpose was not only to strike, but also to cause disruption. It was aimed at despite their overwhelming strength. The Resistance had recognized the invaders thanks to alien robots that took advantage of their weaknesses. Firepower found it difficult to adjust to the Tiger's unpredictable nature. Its sophisticated targeting systems were ineffective against the every time Tiger hit. Its speed and agility caused mayhem in its wake. Compelling, the aliens used brute force to refocus their efforts and provide the opposition with the gap they required. Devastating firepower levels was unleashed by the Force, using their most powerful weapons. Their towering robots whole areas of the battlefield. But the man and his group foresaw this and took advantage of it. The Resistance took advantage of their small stature, which made them sluggish and exposed in confined spaces. Several of these mechanical giants were destroyed by explosives set up in the ground, demonstrating that even the most ancient of their kind didn't seem to bear down on the landlords of the city. The conflict peaked as the opposition drew closer, proving that even the most sophisticated technology could be defeated by bravery and ingenuity. The man led the attack to the command center. His every action was planned to maximize the scarce resources. The Tiger recognized the need and battled with it tore through alien soldiers and disassembled drones with such violence that even seasoned Resistance fighters were in awe. They attracted the enemy's most powerful units, wasting valuable time for the others to strengthen their relationship. The man and the Tiger were clearly visible, moving in perfect unison through the confusion. The alien leadership inside the command center watched the fight with increasing annoyance. They had previously undervalued humanity, and now they were suffering the consequences of their conceit and dependence on technology had made them oblivious to the power of the people they were trying to subjugate. The combat had changed due to the man's strategies and the Tiger's unmatched skill. When the aliens discovered that about 700 kinds of automated guardians had been stolen by a fellow player, they were on the defensive for the first time since the invasion started. And the extraterrestrial commander, this was not your typical foe. It was the mind. Behind the invasion was a creature whose cunning and cruelty had planned the defeat of innumerable things. The man, damaged by years of loss and survival, resisted it with just his determination and the Tiger by his side. The commander's guards are elite troops equipped with the most lethal weapons. Everyone pulled their weapons, but the Tiger's relentless attack caused the weapons to fall one by one. It moved precisely, its instincts directing every move. Strike. The guy engaged in a contest of cunning with the alien commander as the Resistance secured the outer perimeter. The commander misjudged his level of resolve, just as the invaders had misjudged humanity from the start. And first, the man's strength lay not just in his physical prowess, but also in his capacity to adjust, learn, and endure their clash, which was the result of everything. The invasion had been a conflict between conceit and fortitude. The Tiger acted as a mediator between a species that thought it was unbeatable and one that refused to be subdued. The final blow that caused the commander's defenses to be disrupted was a pivotal occasion, although the Tiger suffered injuries and exhaustion as a result. Crumbled after making sure the guy could deliver the last blow, the alien commander fell, and along with it the invasion. When the invasion operation failed, their men, now lacking a leader and lacking organization, started to retreat after the Resistance's once unwavering determination was shattered by the very species they had attempted to enslave. The cost of victory was high. The battlefield was covered in the remains of fallen friends. demolished devices and the wounds of a world irrevocably altered. But amid the destruction, there was also hope, because the aliens' retreat marked not only the end of the conflict, but also the dawn of humanity's resurgence. They demonstrated their ability to defeat even the most formidable adversaries, and that they were strong because they were united, resourceful, and unwilling to give up. The man was kneeling next to the tiger. He remained with it, his palm softly resting on its ragged breathing, a poignant reminder of the price they had to pay for their victory. For as the opposition surrounded them, the tiger's offering was not in vain. It had come to represent what humanity could accomplish when it accepted the power of nature. The cry of resistance that reverberated throughout the battlefield in its last seconds would serve as a reminder that despite overwhelming odds, Earth's spirit remained unbreakable. And the resistance put up a lot of effort in the days that followed to rebuild once the aliens were forced back. But the wounds from the aliens being only the first of several events, several of which would quickly become obvious after the event. Although the guy was exhausted, he continued to drive humanity into a future where invasion would take years to heal. They were able to take back their planet, and the tiger's legacy endured beyond the tales of the combatants. Beside it, but in the human race's renewed resolve to defend the Earth and the creatures that call it home. It was home. The conflict was finished, but the aliens still had lessons to learn. Undervalued the connection between humans and the natural world, the strength that comes from standing, and the power of resilience. Humanity had demonstrated that it was not a species to be subdued, and as the planet started to the guy and his tigers, memory served as a reminder of what was possible when perseverance and optimism were combined. Conquered even the most difficult obstacle.